And good evening and welcome to the November meeting of the Murfreesboro City School Board. We're glad to have those of you that are with us tonight here, and we're glad to have those of you that are watching from home or somewhere on your television. Glad to have you aboard. At this time, I'm going to ask you to please stand. We have two young men, first grade students from Reeve Rogers, Aiden Stone and Alex Judd, to lead us in our pledge, followed then by a moment of silence.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And now a moment of silence. Thank you. Aiden and Alex, thank you very much for being with us tonight. A wonderful job on the pledge.
Good job.
We appreciate it. All right, you have the agenda in front of you. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Vernier. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. King. Any question or comment? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? And there is none. Communications, Dr. Gilbert.
Yes, Ms. Trail.
Good evening, Board. Murfreesboro City Schools would like to thank the following individuals for their financial contributions towards our district-wide Family Game Night initiative. This was the first time we have had this initiative. Mitchell Bowman, Realtors with Results. Ken and Doris Frizzell, Simply Sophisticated Home Staging. Jim and Judy Smythe of J&J Smythe Family LLC. It was a successful night, and we appreciate those donations coming towards that event. Also, congratulations to Miss Diane Hall. Ms. Hall is with Overall Creek Elementary, and she has been named the Girls on the Run Coach of the Year for Middle Tennessee, and this is quite the honor for her. Ms. Hall has been working at Overall Creek for the last 2 years. She's worked very hard to fundraise and promote the Girls on the Run program. She ran a marathon just last month, and is also participating in the middle half to raise money for Girls on the Run. Recycle Rutherford would like to thank all of the participants in our 2016 poster contest. They received over 100 entries to judge, which represented thousands of students who participated. There were many postcard submissions from MCS teachers and students. However, Scales Elementary had the most participants, and their efforts were rewarded. Congratulations to Rachel Everett and Zan Lasko. Both teachers at Scales, they won. They were winners in the teacher participation drawing. So they earned $50 for their classroom. Mitchell Nilsson would like to thank the agents of Bob Parks Realty for their generous donation. You hear this a lot from me. Bob Parks Group is a huge supporter of Mitchell Nilsson in our schools. They actually got to stop by and do something fun this time. They voted on their pumpkin contest, and they had to pay a penny a vote, and they spent lots of pennies. Mitchell Nilsson would also like to thank Kroger at Georgetown Square for their donation of $500. Murfreesboro City Schools would like to congratulate the following individuals for completing the Leadership Academy. So bear with me as I go through this list of graduates. Sandra Lindsay, Tamara Cosby, Pam Holden, Julie Parrish, Christopher Young, Jennifer Clooney, Lisa Van Cleve, Amy Miller, Shiloh Siegel, Dee Dee Potter, Alicia Herbison, Caleb Jones, Susan St. John, Tammy Pirtle, Mary Orcott, Taylor Brown, Ava Jordan, Katie Nanny, Scott Campbell, Amanda Turnbow, Darlene Thomas, Jennifer DeFeer, and Kathleen Hunsicker, and Stephanie Stump. As you can tell, these were teachers, these were people in our transportation department, these are folks in our central office, so it was a good cross-section. The program really covered a broad range of leadership skills, and including personal leadership, interpersonal communications, team development skills, organizational change, and facilitative leadership. So congratulations to those graduates. We would also like to thank Raccoon's Shoes. for their donation of over $2,000 to purchase shoes and socks for our students in need. This is something we have received several years, and we appreciate Rack Room for thinking of Murfreesboro City Schools and our students. And that is your communications.
Thank you, ma'am. Consent items. Do I have a motion to approve the consent items?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Jared Barrett. Second?
Second.
Thank you, Wes. Appreciate it. Any question? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? And of course, there is none. All right, action items.
Your first action item is a return to the Promoting Student Wellness policy. You reviewed this and passed it at your last meeting, but you asked that I kind of group together the topics, and so I've done that under community engagement, physical activity, nutrition, and fostering lifelong habits.
All right, any question pertaining to the policy? Mr. Barrett?
Not so much a question, but thanks for organizing that better
Sure.
for us. It looks a lot better, easier to read.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Mr. Ballard?
Okay, we have the staff recommended version and the recommended by TSBA, and we are approving tonight the staff recommended version. Is that correct?
Correct. That's what I'm requesting.
Okay. Which I think looks very good after you made the changes.
Any other questions or comments? Do I have a motion to approve the policy on second reading?
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. My mind's going blank. It's all right, Gary. It'll happen to you too. All right, thank you, Mr. Settles. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Barrett. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? And there is none. Thank you very much.
Your second action item, the board, we had a request that, again, we draft a resolution this year for vouchers. We believe that that is something that is going to come up before the legislature, and the board has taken a strong stand against vouchers because it does take public money and puts it really into private education. And so you have that resolution before you tonight for a vote.
Mr. Barrett?
It was myself that brought this up, and I think it's imperative that we as a board speak out on this issue. I, for one, am all in favor of public education. Voucher issue is going to come up again in the legislative session, so we have to get up and out in front of this issue, and this is a way to do that. So thank you for allowing me to bring this up, and we can use it to lobby.
All right. Any other discussion or question? We need a motion to approve the voucher.
Move to approve.
Thank you, Mr. Ballard. Have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Renier. No other discussion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? And there is none. Thank you very much.
Thank you, board, on behalf of the district for doing that. I think that there's no one in public education that doesn't appreciate your stance.
All right, reports and information.
The first report is by Mr. Randall Bennett of TSBA.
Good evening, and thank you for inviting us tonight. Thank you for involving us once again in Dr. Gilbert's evaluation. You have in front of you a blue folder with a copy of the completed results. I just want to run through that very quickly. Excuse me. The first appendix is the administrator's perception of the director's overall performance objectives. As you'll see, there's 5 categories there: significantly above expectations, at expectations, below expectations, and significantly below expectations. We had 19 out of 23 administrators respond to this, and as you can see, we put the number that went into each corresponding category. And if you do the math on those, they will add up to 19, and you can see the average scores all the way out to the side there. And the overall mean scores for the administrators was 4.15. You also asked that this count as 15% of the overall score, and we'll get to that in just a minute. Appendix B is your assessment as a Board of Education. Again, we have the same thing as far as demonstrating to you how many of you voted on a particular in a particular category. And as you can see, board relationships, the overall score was 4.27. Community relations, 4.68. Staff and personnel relationships, 3.80. Facilities and finance, 4.48. Vision, 4.10. And student achievement, 4.44. For a mean score for all of the individual categories there is 4.28. And this is to count as 50% of the total evaluation score. Finally, Appendix C, the annual objectives. You can see there are 9 that we've listed there. Again, we broke it down by how many voted in each particular category. And as you can see, the total mean score for Appendix C was 4.40, and you asked that this count as 35% of the evaluation, bringing the total scores up to 100%. You also requested that there be a place for comments this year for the administrators, and if you'll look at page 6, you will see both the board member comments at the top and the administrator comments at the bottom. And I certainly won't bother reading that to you because you're all quite capable of doing that yourself, but I just wanted to point out that it is there for you. Now, if you look at the final page, you will see the percentages for the different appendices, the mean score and the weighted score, and the overall weighted evaluation score was 4.30, which is an excellent score. And I've already been asked what it was last year, and I don't know, because Mr. Campbell, like you, I can barely remember my own name sometimes. So I didn't come and do the evaluation last year, so I can't compare it to last year's. But
4.02.
4.what?
02.
Okay.
okay, so an improvement from last year. But it was an excellent evaluation. I appreciate everyone being so helpful to us as far as putting this together. And it's my pleasure to come to present it to you tonight, and I'll be glad to entertain any questions if I may.
Anybody on the board have a question, Mr. Settles?
I have a question. I don't know if it would be for you or for Mr. Chairman and the other board members. How you all came up with the amount of weight for each appendix?
It matches the teachers and administrators weighting.
Okay, because I'm so chew that up for me a little bit more, because
So you have with your administrators, you have 50%, 35%, and 15%. With your teachers, you have a similar weighting, and so that's reflective in this.
I guess I'll be more specific.
Okay.
When we say 50% board and administrators got,
You're going to have 50% is going to be your observation, which basically would be the board's observation. Then the other has to do with achievement.
that's it.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
Mr. Ballard?
Looking at the performance objectives, how many of these objectives are set with a metric in which that the superintendent is judged by or the director is judged by? Is there a metric that says, okay, we were supposed to be at here and we made it part of the way, but we didn't make it all the way? Or is it just subjective, all of it?
No, your quantitative is going to be that third piece. So it's going to be based on your test scores.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Good question. Any other questions? I think it's, as Mr. Bennett says, I think it's a very good evaluation. It's 4.3 out of a 5-point scale is great. If all of our professional baseball players did that well, they'd be batting 830, 60, wouldn't they?
Did pretty well.
Ma'am?
The Cubs did pretty well.
Who?
Chicago Cubs.
Is that next to the Panthers?
No.
I'm going to stay out of this, Mr. Chairman.
If I could, let me say that as you know, a director of schools is only as good as the people that work with her or work with him. And so I certainly appreciate the principals, central office staff, support staff, teachers, everyone that works in the district, and certainly appreciate the work that you do. I think this is a good school system, and it could not be a good school system without all those folks that work together to make it that way. So thank you.
I think you're exactly correct.
Amen.
Ms. Renier?
Well, I think that the credit needs to be given to you. You're the one who assembled this group, keep them going, and all of the credit. I'm so glad this is a good evaluation because you deserve it. We appreciate you.
I appreciate that, Ms. Renier.
Any other questions or comments on the director's evaluation? Mr. Bennett, thank you very much for being here. We appreciate you, and we appreciate the TSBA very much. And
Thank you,
had
Mr. Chairman.
Had a very good convention meeting 2 weeks ago in Nashville, and passed some very good resolutions in the assembly, the delegates. So thank you very much for what y'all do for us and all the students in Murfreesboro City Schools, as well as others. Thank you.
Thank you.
Your next report of information is about the Leadership Academy, and I'm going to turn this over to Ralph Ringstaff. You've heard a little bit about it. We'll hear a little more about it.
Good evening. About first of the school year, we had about 50 names recommended to us who would be excellent candidates for our first Leadership Academy in several years, I guess about 4 or 5 years. I sent an email out to all 50 employees who were recommended, told them that the first 25 who responded to the email would be accepted into this year's Leadership Academy. The list that was provided for you were those individuals who participated in the academy. As you can see in the packet, we had 6 sessions over the last 2 months. It started out with Vincent Windrow, professor at MTSU. He started it with a bang and just kept at that level. We had 2 professors at MTSU speak to the group, and then we had district-wide supervisors, administrative employees to speak about several topics. Now, I'm going to quit talking and turn it over to 3 individuals who participated in the academy. The first 10 who I asked rejected me, so these 3 accepted my offer. So I'm going to turn it over. I think the first one that's going to speak is Mary Orcutt.
It was a great honor to be invited to be part of the Leadership Academy. Going into this experience, I had in my head that leaders should fit this mold of the people that we see in the spotlight. But after I finished the Learning Academy, I realized that there are many types of leaders, tall and small. One thing is for sure, though, that the community of leaders in Murfreesboro City Schools share the same vision and passion, and that's student success.
My experience is going to sound a bit sappy, but as I was reading to my students today, we were reading The Tiny Seed, and I couldn't help but relate my experience in the Leadership Academy with the tiny seed. And I feel very much that a leader is grown and developed through the work of a team, just like a plant requires energy and nourishment and a place where it can grow and flourish and be surrounded by the things that it needs. And then in turn has time and place to let its seeds grow, or to let its seeds release and for new seeds to grow. And I feel like we were given that opportunity through the Leadership Academy. We were built up, we were encouraged, we were taught. And I feel now that I'm a better listener, and I feel that I see people as leaders that I didn't see before. And therefore, I just think it was a wonderful experience. I'm thankful for it. Thank you.
Save the best for last. Charlie's Angels, by the way. I would just like to say thank you for allowing us to come and share a little bit about the Leadership Academy first. I think the most enlightening thing that I received from the Leadership Academy was bringing a community of people together that represent Murfreesboro City Schools. Like Ms. Trail said before, we had the custodian manager, we have someone from HR, we have teachers, and we had maintenance. So just the community at whole, as every day we see these people and we took them for granted, and not knowing that how much they also contributed to the whole child. So it was just nice to see us all come together and collaborate and come up with ideas and how to be great leaders and have every aspect of the community of Murfreesboro City Schools. So it was just a wonderful experience, and again, thank you guys for allowing us to share our experience with you.
Any questions?
I had the privilege of attending the graduation ceremony the other night, along with Mr. Ballard was able to be there, and so was Mr. King. Either one of you gentlemen have any comments pertaining to what we saw that night?
Just only that it was impressive to me, and I give props to them for taking the advantage to go through this kind of activity, and I think the outcome was very impressive.
I agree. I was impressed by the different people from the different departments, like y'all said, who had as it turned out, the same vision. I was very impressed with the programs, the videos and the things that y'all put on that each group did. And I remember sitting there thinking it'd be nice if others could see this, because some of them were that good, that impressive.
It was a very good session, and I, like the other two gentlemen, enjoyed it very much, seeing all the different people who are involved with Murfreesboro City Schools. In the initial time, I thought it was going to be leadership for administrators, but I found out very quickly that that was not the reason for this leadership academy. These people that were there are now leaders within the school system. It doesn't matter in whatever department, and then we had departments, all departments just about represented. So it was very good, and I applaud you three ladies, and I applaud the other, 22, 25 altogether, for your participation, and I'm sure that it will benefit you and benefit all those that you teach with or that you work with every day as part of our city school system. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You do have information in your packet about the Leadership Academy and what the sessions were. We really appreciate MTSU and the role that they played with volunteering some of their folks to come over, and also all the people that gave up their nights to learn more about leadership and learn more about the district. Very, very much. Next on your agenda, you have Kim Frank. As you know, we received an Asus Grant, and I'm going to let her talk a little bit about that grant and explain what ACE is, if you would, please, Kim.
Good evening. We're not going to do an ACES training per se, but I'm going to give you an overview of why you should care about what this is and what this means for Murfreesboro City Schools. So for the last 4 years, Murfreesboro City Schools, every school in the district, has endeavored to create a multi-tiered model of support for children's behavior and for their social emotional development. And as a result of that sustained initiative, what we've identified is that we have a group of children who really struggle behaviorally and socially and emotionally. And as we've looked at that group of children, we've recognized that they have some things in common. And what they have in common are some adverse childhood experiences. So you might ask, what are those? Well, those are things like family dysfunction, things like divorce, a parent who's incarcerated, a family member, seeing a family member that's physically harmed while you're present. It could be a family member who has some sort of trouble with addiction to drugs or alcohol. These children also might experience something different. They might experience some kind of physical abuse or emotional abuse or sexual abuse or just some kind of neglect. And why that's important is because what research tells us now is that children who experience any two of those things that I just mentioned are more likely themselves to become incarcerated. They're more likely to have trouble themselves with alcohol or drug addiction. They're more likely to have diabetes as they grow up. They're more likely to suffer from some kind of heart disease. And a child who has 4 of those experiences
on average, has a life expectancy that's 20 years shorter than a child who has a lower ACEs score. So for each one of those adverse experiences, a child receives a score of 1, and they're cumulative. So Tennessee data tells us that in Rutherford County, there are approximately 33% of our population has experienced 2 or more of those. We know that a child who has 2 or more, their brain actually develops differently. And so in school, it looks more like they have inattention than another child. They have more trouble self-regulating. They have a lot of trouble controlling their emotions. And so it was armed with that knowledge that Dr. Gilbert and I heard about it first time at a conference that we attended. It was armed with that knowledge that we wrote and submitted a grant with the plan that you have. I gave you a copy of the action steps of our plan, but we wrote a grant to try to address and to help children in Murfreesboro City Schools kind of mitigate some of those adverse child experiences. And I'm proud to tell you that among 72 grant applications, 13 were awarded, and Murfreesboro City Schools was one of those 13. Vanderbilt got one, University of Memphis got one, some other organizations of higher learning got one, Metro Nashville got one, and we got one. And there was a total of $1,250,000 that were awarded to those 13 different grants. And of that $1,250,000 for the first year, we got $200,000 of that. So we were one of the largest, if not the largest, grant recipient. So what we intend to do with that grant is to provide direct service to children who are struggling in school. We don't have to know their ACEs score. What we have to know is that they're struggling socially or emotionally at school, or we might know that they're struggling because of divorce or incarceration. It might be something that the child has shared with us. So we will seek consent, or we have already sought consent from their parents to participate in a pretty intensive 10-week program that will help them learn some skills so that they can have better coping mechanisms. A second part of that grant is to help the parents, because we know that children who are struggling from these ACEs, their parents probably have struggled from the same thing. So we are going to provide parent support groups and then a one-on-one support for each of those families. We're also going to help our teachers understand why sometimes children behave the way that they do. We think that if they understand what ACEs are, and why that they might understand why children do some of the things they do in their class. And also we know that it's a real difficulty for many of our teachers to have the responsibility of caring for a student in their class with that kind of complex emotional needs. So we're going to actually work with them on some self-care to help them. And then finally, we have a community component. It's our responsibility as part of this grant to help educate the city of Murfreesboro and Rutherford County about what ACEs are. We started with that last night by sharing it with a community group that came to central office. But we're going to actually provide training whenever we get invited, and when we solicit opportunities too, we'll do that. But so our community can help support families. If we know that these kinds of adverse experiences have such a dramatic impact on the physical development, the emotional development, and the social development of our children and their families, then it seems incumbent upon us to try to help families in ways that can help them have better skills themselves. So that's the focus of our grant. We received money for 1 year with kind of a gentleman's agreement that if we meet our obligations under the grant, which I can assure you that we will, that we would be eligible for the funds for up to 5 years. So over 5 years, we could have over $1 million to spend on this initiative in Murfreesboro City Schools.
Mm-hmm.
Kim has done a great job. She wrote the grant, so I want to give her credit for that. I really appreciate the change that she has brought about in Murfreesboro City, and really appreciate her being willing to tackle ACEs, because it's something that you'll hear more about. And so I'm glad that we really are ahead of this game for our children. It makes a difference.
Questions?
Any questions? Mr. Ballard?
Yes, sir.
Thank you so much for this, and I know what the effort that you had to put forth to work your way through the maze of getting the grant approved. Can you just give me an example, or give the board an example of, now that you have this money, how would you actually, if you know there's a challenged home, and you mentioned that some of that you'll have direct contact with the parents, can you give me an example of how that works and what you would do?
So with these funds, we were able to hire some mental health clinicians, and we've already provided them training, specific training for this purpose. So part of our curriculum has some activities for families to, just think about the stresses in their home, to teach them better coping skills. Our clinicians are going to work one-on-one with the family to help them identify specific challenges that they have, and then as they learn more about the needs, to help link that family to community services. We can't take on all of that responsibility of taking care of each aspect of that, but we can help link them to other agencies across the county, and to just community opportunities. One of the best interventions for a child who is really struggling with, toxic stress, if you will, stress that never kind of leaves, is to have positive adult relationships that are sustained over time. And so if we can help families link to community organizations or let them know about opportunities, then we can help families build a network of support, and we can also help provide opportunities for parents to spend quality time with their children, to recognize the value of that and the importance of that, and to let them know about opportunities that exist within our community to do so. So it's a pretty systemic effort.
Well, I wish you all the best with your efforts, and congratulations.
Well, it's not me, it's our district. Yes, sir.
Mr. Simmons?
Thank you. My question had to do with the teacher piece of it, the educators. What's the plan for, and I know you mentioned about educating the teachers on what to look for and those types of things. So is this going to be a part of the in-service, or when is this going to be presented, or how? What's the...
We're already working with our school counselors, to come up with brief bits of information. So like during their staff meetings, they're at the school level, so that we present little bits at a time. I think that kind of spiral curriculum tends to have the biggest impact. So we're talking about what are ACEs, what are the impact, what are, of ACEs for children and for families, what's the impact on learning at school. So they'll get it in little bits through our school counselors and through our clinicians that we hired.
So for instance, you have a child that is getting their IP, and those involved say maybe there's something that they could benefit from through this program, then they will contact you.
They would go through their school counselor.
Okay.
We've trained our school counselors as
They've already
well.
been trained on it.
Yes, sir. We got funded on October the 17th, and we trained our people on the 18th. We don't have really much time to waste for these children. Mm-hmm. So referrals go through the school counselor. There's consent. We've written a letter describing the program to parents. Anyone that would be mentioned would get a letter. Mm-hmm. They'd also get a phone call with, to answer any questions that they might have. And a parent does have to consent for their student to participate in the intensive program. But we've involved our social workers as well. So we can't make somebody participate, but we would want to encourage them and let them know the value for their child and also for their family.
I'm thinking of some other, and that's excellent. I like that part. I'm thinking of some other personnel in the school, the janitors, cafeteria workers, bus drivers that see things that may be happening in the lunchroom that maybe doesn't happen anywhere else? Are they also receiving any type of, I mean, when I say that, heads up on look for this, or if you see this, these are the types of things to look for, or maybe even questions to ask? I don't know.
In our grant, we said that we were going to train all Murfreesboro City School staff.
Good.
Yes. Now, it might take the whole year.
Yeah, that's okay.
But that's our goal, because we recognize transportation needs to know, and not just so that they can refer children, but so that when children struggle in the bus or in the lunchroom or on the way down the hall and they encounter a Murfreesboro City School employee, that employee could think about, I want to think about what I say to this child because I don't want to trigger some kind of, event for them, but I want to be sensitive to what they might be experiencing at home. I think understanding is a tremendous way.
And that's exactly where I was going.
Yes, sir.
That's exactly where I was going.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. Barrett?
Thank you for doing this. Sounds like a great program. So glad we can offer it as part of our, I know we offer a lot of wraparound services for our districts. I'm so thankful we can add this to our tool belt and help support those students and parents that really might be struggling out there. So thank you for putting this together.
Yes, sir.
Mr. King?
I just, to me, this, no, you don't have to come. I'm just going to say, this truly goes beyond the classroom.
Right.
I mean, you're literally making an impact on a kid and probably their family as well. I mean, this is going to go past city schools. I mean, this is lifelong.
I'm going to tell you what I think. I believe that this is how we change Murfreesboro.
Mm-hmm.
Because if we have children that have had these kinds of experiences, they grow up to become parents, and that's what they know. And if we can teach them skills to manage their stress, if we can teach them to advocate for themselves, if we can teach them some coping, if we can just let them know that they're not alone and other people experience these kinds of things, and kind of give them an opportunity to work through some of this trauma, because this is really, truly traumatic for these children. If we can help them that way, then perhaps they will parent in a different way, and maybe their child won't have that same high ACEs score themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So I believe that that if we can stick with it, that we can really change the future of a lot of our children.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
One of the comments that Kim has said is she really felt that one of the reasons that we were awarded the grant was because of the capacity we had. And I think that goes back to the fact that we do have social workers, that we do have counselors, that we do have behavior specialists, that you all have supported that. So I think this is the next step, but I think it's building on what we've been able to do. So I think that's really important.
There was a meeting last night hosted in our central office with a lot of community leaders, a lot of educators, school personnel, and this program was presented, and I thought it was a very good time to present it so that all of those in other agencies within our community know exactly what the program is and what it's doing. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
You've heard about the integrated preschool, and so I'm going to ask Angela Fairchild to come up tonight and talk just a little bit about that, because it definitely is growing and has grown and will continue to grow.
Lisa? Well, I'll start talking. You can help me go. Hello. Last year, our preschool assessment team gave a presentation on our integrated preschool in its first year. And we just wanted to give you some updates on that. Thank you. Some updates on that and a brief overview of what our program is for our new board members. We have trouble with the PowerPoint. Well, we have 9 integrated preschool classrooms. That's one more from last year. Cason Lane, Irma Siegel, Northfield, and Scales. Each of these schools have 2 classrooms, but Northfield, we have 3. We've grown 1. We're really growing. IDEA law says that any children beginning at age 3, if they're eligible, we're required to provide special education services for them. And they can qualify in one of those 5 skill areas: fine, gross motor, adaptive, self-help, communication, social, emotional, or cognitive. And I guess the question comes in, how do we find these kids? How do we let the community know? How do we let parents know that we provide these services? Because some families may not know that we even offer these, and they may have 3-year-olds that they suspect some, developmental issues, and we strive to really get into the community and let them know what we offer. And we call this Child Find. So I'm going to let our preschool social worker, Kelly Blanchard, explain our Child Find efforts.
Hi. Child Find, I think, happens in several different ways. A lot of our referrals come in from parents. So parents will call and say that they have concerns with their preschooler. They're maybe not functioning at the same level that they see neighbors or family, so they call in themselves. A lot of parents go to a pediatrician for a well check, and the pediatricians have concerns, so we get a lot of referrals that way. We do active child finding as well. So we are in the community. We have flyers that we pass out at pediatricians' offices, Greenhouse Ministries, Journey Home, daycares. We have done little informal talks at daycares as well as other community agencies. So we are actively looking for children to service in our preschool program. We also, last year, what we found was helpful for us was to do, instead of one big Child Find event, we did 4 mini Child Find events. So they all took place at Northfield. They were publicized via Peach Jar, and we had referrals come in that way. So we would have standing appointment times. The parents would bring the children in. We would screen them. And at the end of the screening, we either determined that they needed follow-up, so a more in-depth evaluation, or they were good to go. It was age appropriate, and we sent them on their way. So we get a lot of referrals. I think I've taken 4 this week, and it's only Tuesday. So it's been a busy week. We've had 6, we will have 6 evaluations this week, and then 5 eligibility meetings for students who will begin. So it's been a busy couple weeks for our preschool team.
And I want to point out that when we have these evaluations, all 5 of those areas are addressed by 5 different people. So it does take quite a while to evaluate these kids, and they're 3. So that plays into it too. We also get kids from the Tennessee Early Intervention Service, or TEIS. These are children that are already receiving special ed services. TEIS starts at birth and goes to 3. So by the time the kids turn 3, on their 3rd birthday, we're required to have a plan in place for them to offer to the parents. So we find out about them when they're 2 and evaluate them when they're 2. And hopefully, if they become eligible, then we will have a plan set for them, and they can start school on their 3rd birthday. So we evaluate, we evaluate the kids, we determine their eligibility in one of those areas, and then we write a plan, an individual education plan, and we hold that meeting at their zone school with their teacher. So at that time, the parents can see the classroom and meet the teacher. Now also, if they come from TEIS, we are required to have what's called a transition meeting. Our social worker chooses to have those all in the home. And we feel like that is a great way to ease some of the anxiety. You know, if you have a child with a disability and they're 3 and they're going to go to school, that can cause some anxiety. It also builds a relationship that we want to start and keep as the child grows up and goes through Murfreesboro City Schools. So we like to start right away. And that's just she came to us, to Joe and I, and asked us, do you care if I have these meetings in the home? Like, no. So that's great. Not all school systems do that, and we're very fortunate to have a social worker just for preschool to do that. So we're very proud of that. So if they do get into a preschool, as I said, it's integrated, which means we share, students with disabilities share the class with typically developing peer models. At this time, we have 5 peer models in each classroom. We have people calling us all the time, wanting to know if we have openings. We have a waiting list, I think of about 15, 20 kids wanting in. So I predict an even bigger turnout this next spring for the Peer Model program. We have 85 special ed students in our preschool today. That number can change every day. Like she said, we get calls all the time, transfer students. It is a split day program for most of the students. 3-hour day in the 3-hour morning session, 3-hour afternoon, and our peer models stay all day. We do have some students with disabilities that stay all day. It just depends. You know, most of the 3-year-olds, a half-day program is what they need. And that's why we can serve so many students, because we have that split day. We like to keep the class size between 12 and 14 students. If you get more than that, it's really hard to meet the individual needs of the students and meet the goals that we have for them. As Kelly said, we have a lot of students coming in. We've got 16 scheduled IEP meetings for students who are eligible, and we have 20 pending evaluations, and that's through, what? 24 pending evaluations through January? Through January. So as you can see, our Child Find efforts are 100%. And do you have any questions about that, about how a student gets in?
Ms. Renier?
I've seen the ads or whatever you put in the paper from time to time. When is your big push, that may be the wrong word, but when is your big program with Child Find? Is it more now in the fall, or?
We have periodic Child Find screening dates. I think we were doing them quarterly. Is that right?
Quarterly, okay. And Kelly, I think it's wonderful that you go to the families' homes. I think that's the best way. When I taught kindergarten in Indiana, we did that. And I think it's the best way to make that nice, easy transition for the families and the children. Great job.
Mr. Settles?
Thank you. I'm impressed too, and I was going to ask Kelly, how open have parents been to have you come into their home to do the evaluation? Very open. Good.
I've probably had one who the parents opted to meet elsewhere, so it's easier for them.
Good. The other question I had, and you've already told me that you guys are pretty much what I would say stacked up until January, but as far as the community piece of it, are we doing anything with like church nursery workers or anything along the lines of that? I didn't hear that mentioned. I don't know if it's part of what you do or.
We get a lot of referrals from church preschools, actually, and we get a lot. We've recently worked with a lot more churches. We end up testing a lot of students who already go to a preschool program in a church, and maybe they've decided that it's not the most appropriate fit for them. And the church preschools have been very open to let us come in and observe the student in the preschool classroom where they already are. So I think those referrals are increasing. That partnership is increasing.
And that team, it's the social worker, we have a school psychologist, a speech language therapist, and any related service, occupational therapist, physical therapist. They've also gone into the home to do evaluations if the parent needs that. So it's just, they're very helpful with parents trying to build that relationship. I've got some pictures, but they're not coming up.
We can
see them.
Oh, you can see
Yeah.
them?
Yeah.
Right.
We got 'em.
Irma Siegel sent these pictures. They had a camp out day on their playground. And I think First United Methodist came over and helped and donated some things. So they had a big time with this. I think that's our occupational therapist and one of our educational assistants. And they spent all day out there and had a great time. And this is Roxana Dove, one of our integrated preschool teachers. She's valuable to us. I've got the easy part. They do all the work, so I appreciate them, and thank you.
Thank you very much. Good report. Very good.
Thank you.
All right, next item, employee survey.
Yes, and that's your discussion.
I'll open the floor up for discussion on the employee survey. Mr. Ballard?
Thank you. I wanted to go back. We talked about this at the last board meeting, and I wanted to go back and revisit it just a bit. I've done a little bit of homework, and I've also want to recant what I said about it should be a mandatory survey. because after some research and study and reflection back on my own experiences with it, I understand that that does have a negative connotation to it, and that's certainly not what we want to do when we roll out a survey or satisfaction survey. I've had I took the opportunity to talk with it's a national company called Corn, Ferry, and Hay, and they are, just to give you a few quick bullet points and give us something to chew on, and then any other members that have information that can share. The idea is that they suggest, and it would be a survey that's put together by the senior management of the school system to drill down on what it is we really want to discover in the satisfaction all across the board, teachers and everyone. And anywhere from a minimum of 33 questions to a maximum of 79 questions. So you can keep it in a it's not a lifetime effort to sit down and do the survey. It is a totally anonymous survey, so there's no way that it's traceable, that anyone that takes the survey should know or will know that they're totally anonymous. I mean, in this particular package, and success for any one of them would need to be that way. Target participation, given that people understand that it's for improvement, and it's also anonymous, that it is about 80 to 85% success rate in participation. And so anyway, and I'll just close by saying that in the program that they propose is that it's about an 8-week operation, 8 to 10 weeks. So that means we'd need to think about it. If we go forward with this, we would need to think about what time of the year that really needs to happen, because you've got about 2 to 4 weeks of preparation, and the survey itself, which is an online survey, is 2 to 3 weeks. And then the results, and then another 2 weeks, and then action planning, because you want to have some action planning time in there too. But then the results are measured against national and any different types of norms that would give us a chance to understand how we are against the norms of, say, well, across the whole nation, but then also if we want to do it in the southeast, or if we want to do it by the northeast, they'd slice it and dice it any way we want it. So anyway, if there's still some momentum to proceed with that, then I would be happy to sit and speak with Dr. Gilbert or any other members of the board, and Mr. Chairman, you might want to see if there's any interest in doing a subcommittee type setup for that. But I guess the first thing is to understand, is there any real interest in doing this? And, I've got plenty of time to do other things, and I know Dr. Gilbert does too, but if we're interested in doing it, then we need to do it. Cost, this would be around the $10,000 to $15,000 range to do this. Now, I know that sounds expensive, but if you put it per head, we're talking $12 a head or $15 a head per employee, to do that. And, I think it's money well spent. Whether we have it, that's a whole nother issue. But, and I know there's other options out there, and Ms. Smith has worked with some numbers that are much better than $10,000 to $15,000, so to see what kind of bang for the buck we get if we want to proceed that way. And I'd like to understand from Dr. Gilbert tonight too, I'll put you on the dime here, where you stand on the whole idea of this.
Well, I think that's entirely up to the board. I mean, I think this is something that the board needs to decide. I think it's important for you to know the why behind and what you want to do with it, though. To me, that would be I know when we do surveys, whether it's the state that does the survey or advanced ed, that there's a clear reason for doing that, which is school improvement.
Well, that's a good point.
So I think that's to me, that would be the key, is determine the why, because that's going to drive what your questions are.
Ultimately, my motivation for it was the hiring and retaining the best talent that we can, and that we do have an attrition that goes on every year. And if we can sometime, bring that down to a point where we're not having to go out and hire each year as much, and we're keeping the best and the most talented teachers with us, that comes through satisfaction, and that's where.
I do think it's important, whatever you design, that it is actionable, so that it would be things that are within our control, because I think that the uniqueness of a school district is that it's not like a business, in that if it's a business, there are things that for example, scheduling or what you can do as far as the kind of licensing and what the day looks like, and so much of that is out of our control. So I think that would be the other thing, is in looking at the questions to make sure they're actionable. And I guess the third thing, and I think Luke Dickerson mentioned this, but I think that if you want it to be actionable, then we do have such a diversity among our schools that I think you're going to need to get school specific on what the needs are, because the schools are tremendously diverse, and I think that matters.
Wes, has this group that you talked to, have they ever done a survey with educators?
Yes, thank you for the question. They have a deep experience with educators. They have a deep experience with healthcare and everything, but yes, educators, and they have actually people that focus on the work with the education groups. So they're specialists in that area, just like they'd have specialists in the financial area or industry area. They have them in the education area. The other follow-up I would say to that about trying to make sure that we get it out there is they help us. They are designed to help us all along the way with the rollout, and also again, I said understanding the results so that we know what we've got. Now, I don't know, did I misunderstand? Did you say to tailor it school by school?
I think you'll have to, because I think the climate of each school is so different.
Yeah,
and I know that's something that Mr. Dickerson had also stated, and I think that's true. I mean, I think that if you're talking about retention, it's going to need to be school specific.
Well, and they can take it and they can give you the norm. We can get a norm from school by school, but we can also get that norm across all the schools. So that's possible. Now, tailoring questions, that gets I don't know if it's that versatile or not. Saying questions for one school versus another school.
And I think when you look at the advanced ed survey and also the teacher survey that the state does, it's broken down by school, but you get the overall too. So it's
and Luke also said there were a number of that the teachers are getting, and maybe the other employees are getting, a number of surveys throughout the year, and I don't know who's throwing those over the wall to them, if you approve each of those or if they just come through the email and they have to respond. But we would need to somehow funnel it down to this is the satisfaction survey, and the rest of that is noise.
Well, I don't think, I wish we could do that. I would like very much to be able to do that, but unfortunately they're coming from the state and Learning Forward and also Advanced Ed. Those are the three I'm aware of. But then I got a survey tonight before I left from the State Department that is for administrators. It's not for teachers. But those surveys, I would love to
say they're noise.
I would love to. Well, they're valuable though, so I can't say that. But I mean, we just don't have any control over doing them.
All right. Well, that was my part. That's all I have to say.
I think the simplicity of it is very important. I can tell you, I think from my experience with teachers for several years, a 33-question survey they're not going to do. They'll drop it because if they don't have to, and there's no way that you can mandate it. In fact, I talked to a teacher today about the survey that we're trying to find out about collaborative conferencing. And they told me, he said, I don't know what collaborative conferencing is. I thought it had something to do with parent conferences. I didn't do it. So, we have to make sure that our folks know what they're talking about when they're taking surveys, and a lot of questions I'm afraid would kick them around. Ms. Renier?
I think for that very reason you just stated, if and when we decide upon this or something different, that's why it would be imperative for us to go in to perhaps a faculty meeting or whatever and explain, this is coming from us. We'd like to know, how are we doing? And I agree, 33, 70 questions, whatever, is way too much. I wanted to ask you if you knew, I'm used to state surveys, everything else that comes along the pike. I know you don't control those, but if we're thinking of doing something like this, can you think of a best timing scenario? That would be one thing I think we'd need to work upon. And you don't have to answer me right this very second. But
I'm going through the calendar.
There you go. You're working on the calendar. Because we know the surveys are coming from the state, sometimes federal, sometimes MEA, sometimes another place. So that's part of what you were asking about. And you asked about action planning. I think that after we received results would be a good time for a retreat, and then we work through what we've gotten and see what we can do. You mentioned something about, I think that your company, we probably, and I could be wrong, we probably couldn't afford that because we're running on fumes this year. Is that right, Mr. Anderson? Okay. And then the idea of comparing ourselves to other districts, I would think if they're not doing the same kind of survey that we are, it might be difficult to compare to somebody else. And I'm not sure, because it's for us, that we really, I can see down the line if we chose to do this, we're going to do it this year, and in 2 years we're going to do it again and get some kind of baseline. Yes, exactly. And the reason why, we want to know that our personnel, just like you said, are satisfied, they're willing to stay with us, we've got the best and the brightest, we want to keep them. Therefore, we want to know, what are we doing right and what could we do better? And I think that, when we first discussed this a year or so ago, that just sounded so easy and so simple, that leave it open-ended. Yeah, I think we'd want to ask a few questions per se. What's your class size, perhaps? Just some of those general things, but then leave it kind of open-ended and say, tell us what you think. Somehow, some way.
That's true.
And again, I have another note, school-specific responses, because we would need to know what's coming from this school, because they are so different. We would need to know something of that nature.
I think we will find if we try to do it, and I could be wrong, but if we try to identify schools, we're going to be in trouble. Because a lot of teachers are not going to identify their particular school, because if their evaluation process is not very good, then their concern is going to be, somebody's going to find out what I wrote down.
But if we went in, Butch Campbell goes into John Pittard and lets them fill it out and hand it right back to you, then you know what came from
That's
John
true.
Pittard.
That's true.
And they're not identifying in any way. Okay. Oh, it's not.
All right, Mr. Settles, and then Ms. Smith.
Thank you.
I think.
Mr. Chairman, I had a couple of things. When we talked about this last time, my question was, are we reinventing the wheel, or is there information that we can glean from some of the surveys that we're already getting? So I kind of went back. Well, no, I didn't kind of. I actually went through and read through some of the ones that Dr. Gilbert provided for us, and I found some questions in here that I felt would be pertinent that we could pull. Now, my whole thing is being able to pull the information from what we already have without having to do something else. I heard retention, I heard, keeping good quality teachers. So I don't know, Ralph maybe could answer if we do exit interviews on teachers or other staff as they leave, that's another metric. I know that's what, in corporate, that's what they do, to find out why we're not retaining the best or what we can do better to keep people on board or to attract good talent. But I did find quite a few questions within this one, the safe and supportive school one, the one that has students, parents, and teachers questionnaires. I found, to me, some things in here, and I highlighted them that would be something that we as a board would be able to look at and say, and they're open-ended, but, you know, there's strongly agree on all of those things. There's not a lot of narrative in that. So I think that's something to consider, that we could really just go through what we have and maybe get more of a sense, and maybe in addition to taking a look at exit interviews to find out what teachers are saying if they leave and when they leave, doing a very open and honest exit interview about their leaving, whatever it is. The other part that I had was dealing specifically with the recommendation of Sterling Communication, and I had a question I think the last time about if they had a sample of, you know, something, and I think that it was more along the lines of they wouldn't be able to provide it, but if there's a similar survey that they've done, I'd feel more comfortable with that, some type of idea to look at. And the other part had to do with the cost, which was $2,000 plus out-of-pocket cost. And to me, and it may not be to anybody else, it just was a little open-ended.
No, it was $300.
Well, I understand that. I see out-of-pocket cost, but then I see a parentheses online survey program fee of approximately $300. My question was, is this the only extra amount? Because it says out-of-pocket cost, parentheses online survey program fee of approximately $300. So I don't know if that means this is one of the out-of-pocket costs or there's going to be some others. So that was my question there. Would there be more, or should we just take out this part that says out-of-pocket costs and just say $2,000 plus online survey program fee? Then it wouldn't, to me, seem like there may be some more out-of-pocket cost. To me, and I'm looking at it. Right. Yeah, and so that was my only concern with that. So I think we've got a lot to consider and chew on, but I'm almost convinced that the information we're looking for is out there, that we already have it. We just don't have our hands on it in a way. And maybe even, and I like the idea that Ms. Rainier mentioned, if we go to the schools and say, hey, this is from us, it's almost like a listening tour, that type of thing, which is almost $0, even if, you know, and they don't have to be any administrators, you know, they can just be teachers where they can feel free, or however. I'm just thinking of a way that we can affect the same outcome without maybe going into a whole lot of subcommittees, and, you know, government takes 5 pieces of paper to change one light bulb, and we don't want to add another layer, I don't think.
Thank you. Ms. Smith, do you have a question?
There's so much that was so good about what you just said. I think when we started talking about this is really supposed to be a simple process to reach out to our teachers who we really want input from the teachers. Just tell us how you think. And it wasn't going to involve a number. Just we were going to have 10 questions. I do think that, I understand what you're talking about, but I do think that we would have to have them list their school, because morale, just in talking to different teachers, morale is different at different schools. Their opinion on how the school year's going seems to be very different. But I still think, obviously, it can be anonymous. Please let it be anonymous, because I want to have much more information. So I love what Mr. Ballard has to offer this group, because you're coming from this business world and you're doing all this great research. That's amazing. There's a lot, the steps that you were taking, that you emailed us today in the process, you know, were great. I do think, money-wise, that I wouldn't be able to vote for that kind of money. And we'd also probably, I would say that we need to bid that out if we got into the big bucks about that. But we did have some other people that I talked to that were in that ballpark, and I sent them a note and said, thank you so much for all of your information, but not really sure that's going to happen. But mainly, I just think I want to write some simple questions. I do love going into the schools to present it and pump it up, and I think that our participation rate that Mr. Ballard is concerned about if we go in there and present it for this board-driven survey, because it is a board-driven survey, because we love Dr. Gilbert, and I was hearing great evaluation results for you as I streamlined on the way over here. But we need to get all of our information is filtered by our lovely director of schools, and we would like to get some feedback directly from the teachers. And that's the whole point of having this very simple survey.
I agree with you. We first started talking about this. It was going to be just very simple 1, 2, 3 type situation. I don't know whether we've taken it to the extreme or not. I know that you did, Dr. Gilbert, and I did too. We discussed this a little bit with Luke, and I think he would be in favor of, I think, from what I understood. What my question to this board now would be, if I were to appoint a committee and also get with Luke Dickerson from the MEA and have him to get a committee of 2 or 3 and let those 2 groups meet together and come up with a feasible survey that we would like to use. Would that be acceptable to the board if Mr. Dickerson is willing to do so?
I have a question.
Okay.
Are you saying that the committee that would be put together would put the questions together and develop the survey, or
they
for
could
the purpose of outsourcing it to someone to?
They could either make the survey, Mr. Settles, or they could determine a group outside of this board or the MEA to develop that survey and to use as, you know, the one you were referencing to a minute ago, that Mr. Marlin gave us a few weeks ago. I like that one too, very much so, because it's good, and you don't have to use all the aspects of it.
You can pull some things out.
You could, you sure could, and it could be only for city school staff. But my question is, do we need to start that process? We're just kind of spinning our wheels tonight, and everybody's giving an opinion. That's fine. That's why we're here. But in order for us to get something done, I think we need to try to put it on the ground level and then get it started and then roll on from there. Mr. Barrett?
I like your idea, Mr. Chair, but maybe they could develop those questions and present it back to us. Like, this is what we recommend.
Sure. Oh, yeah.
And we'll take a vote on it and do all that. But I like that idea. I think it's a good idea. Because like you said, we're just spinning. We're a lot of circular things going on right here. I think we're all on the same page, but we're all have different ways of doing it. So we need to get something going.
I think we either have a committee that does it and comes up with questions and we put it out there, or we have 1 or 2 board members work with a survey company, but we don't go and work on a committee and then hire somebody else to do the questions. It's a waste of money.
Right.
Well, what I was saying was, how are we as a board, I don't know that we will come up in an agreement on the company that we want to hire to conduct the survey. What I'm saying is, let the committee that we put together between our board and the MEA, let them determine if they want to go to an outside source, and if so, where's the money coming from to provide for the outside source, or do they think that they can develop 10 or 12 questions within that committee and submit it, I would say probably to the MEA board and also to the school board, and then let us approve of that. And then, as Ms. Rainier said, I think it'd be very wise on our part, with nothing against our central office staff, but I think it would be very well thought of for a board member to visit the school and to present the survey and collect them, if that's the way we're going to do it. The committee thing, trying to come to a consensus of opinion and get it together, is what I'm asking you about right now. And then if you agree to that, then I'll contact Mr. Dixon, and if he agrees to that, then we will appoint the committee or the representatives from the board. And I would say no more than 3. All right, Mr. King, then Ms. Renier.
Everybody's made some good comments and good points. I like the idea of the committee, but I think the committee, the board committee, and the MEA committee ought to get together to basically decide what do we want to know. For example, and I'll say retention. But when the board may think retention is an issue, the MEA may say, nope, it's not. Here's what we think is something we'd like to discuss. We're kind of back at square one. So we want, the MEA may come and say, that's not a problem. This is what we would love to work on to improve. Then what we thought doesn't matter. But I like the idea of hiring the group, the person Collier's talked to. Yes, it's $2,000, but this is what these people do all day. And how can Mr. Ballard's group, I'll ask a minimum of 33, and this person can ask 10, so we better know what we want to only ask 10 questions. And my gut tells me that topic is going to be, it's going to be one topic, so to speak. I agree. We should say the only identifying mark is what school. We don't need to know how long have you been teaching or anything like that, because that would, somebody could say, well, I could figure out who I am. We would want to say, what school, and that's not one of the 10 questions, I would hope. But since it's us doing this, I wouldn't want to rush into it. I want to take our time, and we could go ahead and start telling people that when we get this going, that there's no rush, there's no deadline, it's no hurry up for this. But I do think we need to listen to what the MEA thinks, let these two committees, if you will, determine what the topic, one or two topics will be, and then let that expert craft the 10 questions to get the result or to help bring the most out of the teachers.
Okay. All right. Any other comments? Yes, ma'am.
Personally, this is just me. I love your idea of a committee, a couple of board members, a couple of MEA or whomever. Not everybody is involved with MEA. If they come up with 3 people, also whatever. But when you're saying go back and let them approve it and then us approve it, I don't think we need MEA approval. I like what you're saying about they may have a different, our concern may be retention of teachers. As you said, they may have other things that are more important to them or they think are a bigger issue. So that's where the discussion in this committee would come about to come up with questions. I think they should help develop some questions, but I don't think, and no offense to MEA, I love MEA, I was a member forever. However, I don't think that they need to approve it. That we just need some guidance from them as to what they feel are issues that are important, and then bring it back. We make up this list of questions. Maybe they're probably helping us. I think that would be great. When you mention identifiers like the number of years teaching, if they put it in a box and we're standing in another part of the room and they're just walking up, turning these face down in a box, we're not really going to know, and that's not our goal. However, I think it's kind of important to know what those brand new teachers are feeling as opposed to what, for lack of better words, seasoned teachers are feeling. I think that's kind of valid as well. And then I'm thinking, this company wants to charge $2,000. If we develop the questions and we come up with a form and we type it up, is it going to cost us $2,000 in copying costs? I think not. I think we could probably do that ourselves if we're the ones who are going to develop the questions.
Okay. All right, some good thoughts.
Oh, another thing I was going to say, I, in my mind, and again, Dr. Gilbert, you'll tell us a better time, but in my mind, I wish we could get this developed before the beginning of next year, not next school year, January-ish or February. Do you think we can pull that off? Maybe not. I don't know.
I don't think so. Not with holidays coming up, people traveling. I think you're
Well, maybe February.
Asking too much sugar for a dime.
Yeah, well,
Mr. Barrett?
Time I like
Well, I could be wrong. You know, the committee can come up and say they may.
I was going back and looking at the scope of work. I can't talk this morning. Scope of work Ms. Smith gave us, and we're discussing maybe 2 of the 3 things that are mentioned: developing the objectives, developing the questions, things like that. So my other question was, who would collect the questions, and who would administer the questions? Us as a board, I can't imagine us sitting there in the schools, and then, tabulating up the results of the questions and presenting it.
Yeah, and this proposal is for online.
Yeah, and this is for online, so there's no, we wouldn't have to. I mean, I don't even know anything about presenting a survey. I'm starting to read this, and then all this discussion here. This, there's a cost, but maybe this would be the way to, now that I'm reading it and looking at it. And
Mr. Anderson's got his notebook open. He could probably share that idea.
You have no money in the budget right now assigned to this. What you have is $15,000 in your line for board training education. Last year you didn't come close to spending that. So if you're going to do this, I would recommend that we transfer money out of your education line and put it into that. If we don't do it that way, you're going to have to do a budget resolution, and then we have to take it to City Council.
If we were to do that, and we were to transfer that money out, would that come out of our part of the budget that provides our expense for our training and any kind of meetings and that sort of thing goes? Same line item?
Yes, sir. And depending on how much money you're going to spend on this, like I said, you have $15,000 budgeted, and last year you didn't even spend half of that on your training. But as long as you don't spend a lot more or go do a lot more things than you did last year, you should be okay.
Good. All right. If there is no more discussion, I'll get in touch with Mr. Dickerson, and I will let you know what he has decided or what he thinks, and then we will go from there. But I don't see that we're going to get it done by February. It may not even be maybe not by February, maybe even in March time we get to it. But I think we can get the process rolling and get it done and find out some answers on what we're looking at.
Will we even have one meeting in December or no? So this is it until January.
That's right. Okay. Thank you very much for your comments and your suggestions. And if you have any others before I talk to Luke, just please let me know. All right, Mr. Anderson, I guess your revenue and expenditure.
Yes, your revenue expenditure report's in your board packet, and this is at the 33% time of the year. We're in the red, $2,260,915. Last year at this time we were in the red, $3,812,189. So as far as that goes, we're in a little better position than we were last year at this given time. On your revenue side, we're at exactly the same point of 23.2% of revenues collected. Our sales tax number is up $223,000 over last year at this time. As you can see in the very first line of property tax, we do not have any property taxes collected yet. That is cash flow issues for every school district in the state, that property taxes don't come in until the year's or halfway done. So that will start to hit for us in the next 3 months when people start paying their property taxes. But revenue-wise, we're exactly the same point we were last year as a percentage of what we have projected. On the expenditure side, we're slightly under, we're 26.8% of it, and I've been analyzing a little bit about the individual categories, and if you look at each one, we're in really good shape on the 33% because that's what we're tagging. The ones that are smaller budget numbers, smaller departments, tend to be over because when we get our software, we pay our software fees, everything out at the beginning of the year. That impacts the budget more on the front end than it does as we go through the year. It's like, for example, attendance office has that, and it's a small budget code, so it has a higher percentage in finance and HR. We all pay those fees, so that's why that one's a little skewed on it, but it's still we're still right where we should be. on the revenue and expenditures. And if anyone had any questions for me on those. The one thing I would like to say is, remember, when you see the enrollment report, we're not going to grow the number we grew last year, and we built in $1 million in the budget this year because of the anticipated growth. We're not going to probably get that money, so even though we're right on target where we were last year, we got $1 million more towards the end, so we have to be very careful as we go through the rest of the year.
Mr. Ballard.
Thank you, sir, for your report. Simple question. When do we make up the $2 million? And are we in any danger of not making up the $2 million?
Okay. Every year, because of the way money comes into districts, you get your money basically in January, February, March. Mm-hmm. We cross the line over into the black. Every school district goes through red ink until then. I think we'll be close to that, but remember last year when we threw that extra $1 million in at the year, that really helped us go through, because we had budgeted to use some fund balance last year, and when you get your audit report in January, we've got our preliminary audit back, and the audit came out fine, so you'll see where we are. To answer your question directly, I think we'll cross over in the black at the normal time, but we're not going to have that extra cash towards the end of the year that we got this year.
Okay, so you're not in any fear of making it, or Dr. Gilbert, you're not in any fear of running over
Mr.
budget?
Anderson talks to me every single day.
Don't I out there, everybody? Every day we discuss, because it's our big concern about money always, but that's the reason you do have fund balance dollars. If you do come short one year, you have that to fall back on, and that's why the state requires you to have a 3% fund balance when we get going. It's going to be close this year because we did budget that extra revenue, and I'm hoping that our property tax numbers come in stronger than what we budgeted. Our sales tax numbers are coming in stronger than we budgeted, so those are good things. If the economy stays healthy, we feel much better. If the economy starts to fall, then we are concerned.
And if the temperature stays like it is.
Yeah, I've actually been watching our utility usage on a daily basis, and on electricity, we're using 4% less right now than we used last year. So I'm really good about that electricity. So that's a big help to us.
And hope it's not a bad winter.
We are hoping it's not a bad winter. And just remind everybody, please shop locally to keep the sales tax revenue here.
Amen.
Mr. King?
Perfect segue when you mentioned about I was looking at lines 13 and 14, the maintenance and operation of plant. Am I right? It looks like have spent less money in both categories this year than we were a year ago?
Yes, sir. So far, and I went and pulled that one up to have it here. Electricity-wise, right now we spent 31% on electricity at the 33%. We spent 21% on natural gas and 31% on water and sewer. So those numbers are all below where you could be. Now the gas, granted, the gas is going to go up when we start to heat those big buildings that have the traditional cooling tower and 4-pipe HVAC systems. But when you get a chance, check out our energy program. Just look at it and see the differences. It's really, really neat.
And in February, if it's 0 degrees, I'm going to remind you of tonight and that you jinxed us this year by saying it.
Yeah.
So you're just giving me credit for controlling the weather now.
Well,
Okay. That's good to know. Good to know.
Continue, Mr. Anderson.
Any other questions on that one? Okay, the next one is the enrollment report, and it's the end of the third period, 20-day period. Our enrollment's at 8,462. We're up 43 over the end of last year. We basically have to get to a little over 80 to share in any of the growth money this year. So, go out and drum up more students to come to us in that time. Our pupil-teacher ratio for K3 is 19.04. For 4 through 6 is 21.43. Our average pupil-teacher ratio right now is 19.91, which is, as you know, excellent. And our average attendance percent is 96%. I'd still like to get back to our 97s, but 96 is still excellent percentage. just as a footnote to the earlier report you have, we currently have 84 students in special ed pre-K on this report, and they mentioned 85, so we've grown since the time we did this report a week ago. And also, if they end up with 20 more, we're going to be over 100, and last year we ended in the 90s. Just so you know, that population continues to grow for us.
Last month, if I remember correctly, we had, our growth was right at 100 students over last year. We're down to 43, so I'm assuming that means that some of that 100, at that particular point in time, we had not accounted for one way or the other.
If you remember last month, I said I was going to change what we get funded for, what we don't get funded for, and when you look at the reports, the difference is I moved it around so you're showing what you're really growing on students.
I got you.
Okay, so that's why this one's more correct. The other one, when I saw how much that other one was, I says I need to change how we're extrapolating this information so that you get a true picture of how many students there are, and that's why it is that way.
All right, any question on the enrollment report? Personnel report? Is there? All right, other business? Mr. Barrett?
I got a few things. Won't be brief, but with the legislative session coming up, I would like to be able to give like brief updates during the January, February, March meeting, if you all would
sure
oblige during that. The stuff tends to go pretty quick, so we need to stay on top of that. Another thing, Dsba Convention was held earlier in November, and a few of us went. I know I did, Butch, Collier, and Bill went. I got you.
I was at a wedding.
I saw a great presentation on e-meeting. It's a service TSBA offers, and it basically puts all our meetings online. It puts it in the cloud, so you wouldn't get all this paper. It would be able to put it all on one spot, searchable database. The agenda can be updated on the fly. It seemed like it has a calendar on there too, so you can check dates of what's coming up. So it just seemed like it was a one-stop shop for organizational purposes. It was $1,500. I know we just talked about cost of doing a survey, so this was like $1,500 cost. Maybe we can revisit it at budget time, but I wanted to bring it up as an idea, and I sent you all a link for that too in your email. I just think it's a great tool. I know I talked to Mr. Anderson about it because he's on the Williamson County School Board, and they use it over there. And I talked to a woman from Bedford County, and they use it down there, and she loves it. She goes, I don't have to lug around big binders anymore or store all this paper at my house. And she goes, it's totally searchable. You know, during a meeting, I can search for something 5 years ago, and it pulls up, and she can read it. You can write notes on different things that you're talking about during the meeting. It was just looked like a great service. So I just wanted to put that on everybody's idea. And Ben Torres was the one that showed it to me. We've all met Ben, and he said he'd be happy to come and give a demonstration of it at some point. If January, February, you want to have him come up and do that. So,
all right, what is, real quick, the advantage of that as compared to what we have now, that we're able to go back to board minutes and that sort of thing that we're doing now on our website through the Murfreesboro City Schools?
Well, it's searchable. Everybody's on the same page, so it's no more like, I know in the past sometimes I've pulled something up and I'm looking at something different than somebody else is looking up. So that's another thing. We're all on the same page. The agenda is you can update it on the fly. So even if something came up 5 minutes before the meeting, we could update it, stick it in, and you could insert it right there on the spot. So you wouldn't get all these like handouts and things sitting up here on the paper. So I'm thinking of costs for the paper, organizational stuff for our secretary, just trying to get everything organized. It's all in one spot for everybody. And it's secure. You can log in and look at it. There's a count. I mean, it just seemed like it was a very easy way to get us into the, more into the 21st. I know we're already there, but more into the 21st century. But
Kelly, would that, and Jerry's brought up some good points, would that be acceptable for us to amend the agenda right before the meeting if we put it on something like that?
It would be if it was a regular meeting. If it's a regular meeting, you would be able to do that. If it's a special called meeting, you would not be able to change the agenda.
Well, I'd love to look at it. I think, you know.
We can have somebody give him a call and see if he wants to come up January, February.
Yeah.
He'll demonstrate it for us and show it how it works.
Okay. All right. Other business, Ms. Smith?
So he said that we went to this, it's the Tennessee School Board Association meeting, and they always have it at Opryland, and actually we're encouraging them to bring it to Murfreesboro, so that would be super. We can hold it. I think we should push that. So, and we've gotten some response to that. So
Great idea.
Anyway, Dr. Gilbert and I went to a seminar that I was crazy about, and I know, you know, we probably can't do it right now, but as we've talked about before, I love the outdoor classroom. I love the field trip, and we went and we learned about a program they have in Athens City Schools, and they own a camp that's really rustic, and they have their curriculum, and they take the kids out, and they learn how to survey, they learn how to measure things, they learn about different types of trees, they learn about irrigation systems, and it's all outside, and it's, you know, instead of sitting at your desk and, you know, not taking in all the science, you know, it's a great way to take it outside and learn a little more. And they only spend, now they put this camp together 50 years ago, but their budget for this camp is $10,000. And they put all of their kids, they go out to this camp. So anyway, I've been thinking about ways that, you know, we have different resources around Murfreesboro that, you know, maybe we should just toss around in our, you know, and with each other and with all of our friends about how we can work. And I will tell you that they had ways that the children in special education, they go to this program too. It's fully accessible, which I thought was fantastic. So they canoe, lots of opportunities that many of our kids don't have. But I loved hearing about that.
Okay. Yes, ma'am.
I have a question. Earlier, Mr. Barrett, when you were talking about the legislature starting soon, and mentioned, you know, lobbying against charters, what is the outcome of the city hiring the lobbyist? Is he or she helping us as well?
Yes, they will be. There are specific focuses that he will have, and I think that'll be beneficial for us.
Great.
Will we know what those specific things are?
I can let you know that.
Okay. It would be helpful for when we're contacting people too.
I think the focus will be specific to the city.
Okay.
Rather than necessarily overall that some of our other focuses will be.
Thank you.
Take one and pass them. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
One more thing, Mr. Chair. Our meeting, December 12th.
Hold up. I'm getting ready to
Oh,
take
you're
all
going to
that.
do it? Okay.
One of those goes to Dr. Gilbert too,
I'll
please.
let you take that one.
All right. I have been in conversation with the county school board chairman multitude of times pertaining to this meeting, and you will see I've kind of outlined it for you. The meeting is December the 12th on a Monday, beginning at 5:30 with some brief reception and refreshments beginning at 5 o'clock. It'll be held at the county school board office. We are asking each board member, if you will, please, to submit to me by December the 1st 3 questions that you would like to have for a legislator. If you have a question for a specific legislator, please indicate that along with your question. Now, what we are trying to do, we will have, I think there's 7 legislators, I believe. Therefore, they should be able to get 2 questions. And we are going to say, if Mr. Marlin is a legislator, we're going to ask Mr. Marlin a question, but then we're not going to give the other 6 an opportunity to elaborate on it, unless they have a major difference in it. That way, we want to be able to keep the questions specific. If we ask Mr. Marlin about vouchers and he gives his opinion, if somebody else has a big-time different opinion and they want to chime in, okay. But other than that, I don't think the chairman will allow that to go on. So that's how we'll be directing the question and not having too many times. Seating will be prearranged in order that the legislators, board members will not be seated in groups as we did before when we hosted the meeting. Okay, dress as casual. It will be a publicly televised meeting, probably tape delayed. So if you know that you're not going to be able to be there, and you may not, but I hope that everybody will be able to be there, because I think it's a very important meeting for us to meet with our legislators and let them know where we stand on things and try to find out maybe where they stand, if they will tell us, so that we can have a good meeting. That's my report, Mr. Barrett.
Okay, well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate it. Thanks for putting this together, Mr. Chair. I appreciate that. I'll just let y'all know I'm asking the voucher question so we don't get 6 or 7 questions about vouchers.
I was going to ask about vouchers.
Weren't you? Well, okay. Well, you can.
Well, and that's why Jeff and I thought we would have everybody submit 3 questions.
Okay. Yeah.
So then if your question about voucher is asked before, then you've got another question to be ready, and we'll know what those are too.
Okay.
Kind of along the line.
We will ask the questions?
Yes.
Or you'll just take that list and you guys will answer?
I think that you as a board member will ask the question, because if you want to ask a specific legislator a question, then that'll be yours. And I called today to try to get the voting background on one of them, because I've got a question or two that I want to ask.
They all have the same.
Probably so. Probably so. All right. Any other questions about that? And if you have a question about it, feel free to give me a call, or you can give Jeff a call, as far as that's concerned. But I know their board was meeting tonight, and he was going to go over this same information that we came up with today. All right. Anything else to come before this board? Thank you very much. We've had some very good discussion tonight. I think it's been very beneficial, and we will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Barrett. Second?
Second.
All in favor, good night.